Have you ever heard about the words fiscal policy and monetary policy? Do you know what they mean, or when to apply them in the economy, or who applies them? If you don't, keep watching this video and I will break it down for you. Firstly, fiscal policy, which is government spending. We usually associate government spending with the economist John Maynard Keynes. According to him, the government should increase their spending when there's a recession, high unemployment, or bad economic period. This is to stimulate demand. The government should save money when during periods like economic growth and prosperity. This is to prevent the economy from getting overheated and to not create a surplus. This is where the multiplier effect comes in. The multiplier effect is an idea of a little action creating a chain of other actions in the economy, like a domino effect. So, by government spending, the government helps the economy to start rolling again. For example, if the government decreased the taxes during a recession, this will lead to higher consumption, which therefore leads to more production and make companies want to produce and invest more because the demand is higher and the taxes are low, which leads to more products to buy and the economy is rolling and there's a circulation in the economy again. The Phillips curve. People thought that there was an economic trade-off between unemployment and inflation, like a correlation. This was described with the Phillips curve. This idea was when government spending increases to reduce unemployment, then inflation increases, and vice versa. A little bit in depth. When economic growth, it comes with inflation, which leads to more jobs and less unemployment. Some policymakers thought that this could be exploited by fiscal and monetary policies, but the Phillips curve could only be used in the short run, not long run. And because in the 1970s, for example, the US experiences stagflation. Therefore, the view of the Phillips curve changed. And stagflation is when there's a high inflation and high unemployment and low economic growth. This is very bad and it's very hard to cure stagflation, but one way could be to increase production. But this is also very hard, because by increasing production without supporting inflation, the economy could lead to higher growth /GNP. How can government spending hurt an economy, or what are the difficulties by using fiscal policy? One difficulty is timing. It's very hard to know when to spend or save because everything can happen. The government or the politicians, they prioritize short time over long term, so that's a difficulty. And also different ideologies, if we have communism and capitalism in the same room, which is not very common, but just to give an example, it's very hard to collaborate and decide what to do. And one way of hurting the economy and also difficulty is that they crowd out private investment, because if the government spending increases, it will lead to an increased inflation, which then leads to increase in the interest rate. I'm so sorry for that. increase in investments because the interest rate is higher now, obviously. And now monetary policy. So monetary policy is controlled by a country's central bank. For example, in the European Union, the European Central Bank is responsible for the monetary policy. This, just like fiscal policy, is a tool for trying to influence the economy. And the goals for monetary policy are stabilizing prices / controlling inflation. Second one is achieve full employment. And employment is important because employment means that a person that is generating money for the state. And the two last goals are encouraging sustainable economic growth and to keep the financial system stable. Sometimes monetary policy can't always help an economy, so sometimes fiscal policy will be needed. But the organizations / central banks are independent from direct political control, because politicians often focuses on short-term goals rather than goals like economic health. And if the central banks were dependent on politicians, then politicians would try to make the banks to stimulate the economy before an election, like printing out more money and low interest rates, and this will lead to unsustainable economic growth and high inflation, which is not one of the goals of an economy. But why do an action from the central banks influence the economy? Well, when the central banks maybe increase the interest rate, the banks will also increase their interest rates, and we, like average normal people, borrow and loan money from the bank. So, for example, if the central bank raises the interest rate, then the banks will raise their interest rate on loans and mortgages. And borrowing will become more expensive, and as the borrowing costs rises, lending will slowly slow down. And now it's a short explanation for what an interest rate is. And if you do know, you can either continue watching this part or just skip this part. So, an interest rate is often presented in percentage, and it's the cost of borrowing money or the return on saving money. So, if the cost of borrowing money is expensive, then businesses and like we normal people won't take as many loans or as high loans because the interest rate is so high, so we have to pay a lot of extra money when we're taking a loan. But if the interest rate, like the cost of borrowing money, is really low, like we barely pay any extra money for borrowing money from the bank, then this will encourage companies and we people to take investments or to take loans. So to summarize it, how does it impact the economy? Well, lower interest rates, it encourages borrowing and spending, it boosts business investment and consumer purchases, and it leads to economic growth, but it can cause inflation if it's overused, and we don't want inflation. But if there's higher interest rates, this will increase borrowing costs, which will lead to reducing spending because it will become more expensive, and it slows down inflation. But it could also cause an economic slowdown or recession. So, to summarize, interest rates can influence consumer behavior, investments, employment, inflation, etc. Now, I'm going to explain how the central banks can control the economy, but I will trying to simplify it while I'm going in deep. So, think of the economy as a bathtub filled with water. The water represents the money in the bathtub, which is the economy. And if there's too much water in the tub, it will overflow, which in the economy is high inflation. So, with monetary policy, the central banks can control the faucet and how much water there will be in the bathtub. And there's two ways. One is OMO, which is open market operations. The central bank can either add or remove water from the economy by buying or selling government bonds. And this is how it works. By buying bonds, the central bank turns the faucet on and it adds water to the tub, which water is money. And when there's more money, people and businesses can spend and borrow more. And this will stimulate the economy and help the economy to grow. And by selling bonds, the central bank opens the drain and it takes water out of the tub, so there's less money in the economy, which makes borrowing harder. This will slow down spending in the economy and control, for example, inflation. The second tool is discount policy, which is interest rates can be compared to the price of water, and this is how it works. Interest rates goes down, which leads to the price of water is cheaper, which is borrowing money. The economy grows because people and businesses borrow more to buy, for example, cars, houses, because when interest rates are low, it's more profitable to buy a car for households, like normal households. You would rather buy a car in low interest rates than high interest rates. And if interest rates goes up, the price of water is more expensive. Borrowing money is more expensive. So just like in OMO, open market operation, it helps slowing down spending and controls inflation. This is because people and businesses borrow less and save more. And OMOs is the most common to control the economy. This is because it directly affects demand, supply, and interest rates. So now I'm going to just form some questions so you know if you understood it or not. And if you have any questions, you can either just comment down below so I can answer you, or maybe another person can answer. So I hope you learned something and hopefully understood it. I tried my best explaining it very simplified and trying to use examples so you would understand it more. But if you have feedback, please let me know. feel free to answer the questions in the comments so I can maybe see if you understood it correctly. Or you could just go back to the video if any question seemed a little bit cryptic to you. So I hope you really liked this video and thought that fiscal and monetary policy were interesting enough to listen through it all. If you didn't, that's fine. I also have short attention span sometimes. But please, if you liked this video, just give it a like and subscribe. And if you didn't, just I don't care. So yeah, thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. See you in the next one.